But I will just, oh, thanks, Rachel. She just, you get all these flash ups and things. Before I do hand over to our speakers, just want to say a few words really about the University of Leeds commitment and the University of Leeds Libraries commitment to open. So there's a couple of relatively recently published documents here, strategy documents. The first one, Universal Values, Global Change. So that's the University of Leeds as a whole strategy. And then the bottom one is Knowledge for All. So this is the University of Leeds Libraries Vision strategy document that's recently been published, which emphasises that the challenges facing our society today can only be solved through global cooperation, collaboration and openness, and that the University of Leeds Libraries will foster the open culture that is needed to make a meaningful difference in this world and support learning and research that is able to address challenges on a local, national and global scale. So I'll confess that I haven't fully digested these documents myself yet, but to give you a quick overview for Knowledge for All, which is the University of Leeds Libraries Vision. It comprises 4 strategic programs: digital futures, open higher education, sustainable environments and enriched experiences, with 3 underpinning themes and 20 strategic priorities. And as I say, this is designed to support the broader university strategy, all pulling in the same direction. So as I say, I haven't yet digested this document myself, but I ran it through, one of these word cloud generators yesterday. And obviously you can go and have a look at the document yourselves at your leisure if you would like. But this is the top 50 words in that document, so it gives you a sense of the strategic focus of the Knowledge for All vision. And I didn't do that by design, but open got the bullseye position right in the middle, but it gives you a sense of the emphasis on open across this strategy. These are some of the strategic priorities. As I say, there's 20 in all, but just to emphasize in particular, number 6, so that's states that the strategy is designed to help position the University of Leeds at the vanguard of open higher education by leading sector debates on open research and open educational resources for global reach, impact and benefit. It also emphasises diversity, which is obviously, as I'm pretty sure, I know my colleagues today, Lorna and Antonio, will touch on diversity and the role that the library has in, the ambition for the institution to decolonise the curriculum, etc. And also emphasises, if we're a big library with, I'm based in the research support team. So I should have introduced myself. I'm Nick Shepherd, Open Research Advisor based in the library research support team, but obviously we have a large library covering collections and wider culture through our galleries, etc. as well. So in terms of our established support for open, which obviously will underpin those the strategy, the vision going forward. Obviously, as many, I'm sure I've got other colleagues from other libraries on the call today. We support open access to research through our repository, the White Rose Research Online repository, or ROE as we call it, which is the repository shared with the universities of Sheffield and York. Open and fair data through the Research Data Leeds repositories. We've got several repositories to facilitate both open and controlled access to data, where that's not always possible to make sensitive data open, for example, but can still be accessible and open metadata. And again, like many libraries and research institutions, we're focusing a lot now on open research, which is my particular remit within the library, to open throughout the research life cycle. So beyond just showing the data and the final publications, but the methodologies, things like preprints and pre-registration, and just really trying to open up everything we do in terms of the research life cycle. Obviously, I'm speaking from the perspective of the research support team in the library, but I think there's colleagues on the call as well from our learning development skills at library team. So obviously they're heavily involved in this area as well. And also, as I say, my colleagues in special collections and our galleries. And that, I think, is a challenge for us as well, as a university, as a library and as a sector, to, break down some of these silos and make sure we're collaborating as effectively as we can. I will just flag up some of the work we've been doing with Wikimedia as well, fairly informal, but I know Lorna's going to talk about it. And personally, and I think institutionally, there's huge potential for Wikimedia as a scalable open platform. And as I say, I know Lorna's going to talk about it. And frankly, most of what I've learned has come from Edinburgh. There's a quote there from a colleague of Lorna's at the University of Edinburgh, who talks about Wikimedia in residence, and I'm hoping Lorna will talk about that. We don't currently have one, but just to flag that up as some of the work we have been doing and the potential with this, which hopefully Lorna will go into more detail about in a moment. So with that, I shall pass on to our speakers. So just to introduce them quickly, we'll have both speakers one after the other rather than taking any questions in between, but please do post any questions in the chat as we go. So very pleased to welcome Lorna Campbell. So Lorna is Learning Technology Service Manager at the University of Edinburgh, Edinburgh's Open Educational Resources Service. She's also a trustee of Wikimedia UK and the Association for Learning Technology, and has a long-standing personal commitment to supporting open knowledge and education. And she will be followed by Antonio, a colleague from here at Leeds. So Antonio Martínez-Arboleda is the academic lead for open educational practice and co-director of the Centre for Research in Digital Education here at the University of Leeds. He's been a champion of open education since 2009, initially as part of the Humbox team and co-researcher of the JISC-funded project OpenLIVES, both of which are worth looking up if you're interested, and we'll post some links as we go. So with that, if you're ready, Lorna, I'll stop sharing my slides and hand over to you, if that's okay. Thank you.
Brilliant, yes. Okay. Okay, can I just check that you can all see that and that you can hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can. Hopefully everyone can.
That's brilliant. Let me just, yeah, that looks great. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Nick. And it's a real pleasure to be joining you here this afternoon. It's great to see so many people here. So I'm just going to launch straight in because I don't want to take up any of Antonio's time. But before we get started, I just want to quickly recap what we mean when we talk about open education and OER. So the principles of open education were outlined in the 2008 Cape Town Declaration, which was one of the first initiatives to really lay the foundations of what it referred to as the emerging open education movement. And the Declaration advocates that everyone should have the freedom to use, customise and redistribute educational resources without constraint in order to nourish the kind of participatory culture of learning, sharing and cooperation that rapidly changing knowledge societies need. And the Cape Town Declaration is still a really influential document, and it was updated on its 10th anniversary as Cape Town Plus 10. And I can highly recommend having a look at this if you want a broad overview of the principles of open education. As conceived by the Cape Town Declaration, open education is a broad umbrella term. There's no one hard and fast definition. In the words of open education scholar Catherine Cronin, open education is complex, personal, contextual, and is continually negotiated. One conceptualisation of open education that I like is from the not-for-profit organisation OER Commons, which says that the worldwide OER movement is rooted in the human right to access high-quality education. The open education movement is not just about cost savings and easy access to open licence content, it's about participation and co-creation, and I'm going to come on and say a bit more about co-creation in a minute. Owing to its contextual nature, open education encompasses many different aspects. However, open education resources, or OER, are central really to any understanding of this domain. And again, although there are many different definitions of the term OER, the one I tend to default to is this one from the UNESCO definition. And this definition is taken from the UNESCO recommendation on OER, which aims to facilitate international cooperation to support the creation, use and adaptation of inclusive and quality OER. And the recommendation states that in building inclusive knowledge societies, open education resources can support quality education that is equitable, inclusive, open and participatory, as well as enhancing academic freedom and the professional autonomy of teachers by widening the scope of materials available for teaching and learning. And central to this recommendation is the acknowledgement of the role that OER can play in achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and particularly Sustainable Development Goal 4, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So here at the University of Edinburgh, we believe that open education and the creation of open knowledge and open education resources are fully in keeping with our institutional vision, purpose and values to discover knowledge and make the world a better place, while ensuring that our teaching and research is diverse, inclusive, accessible to all and relevant to society. And the university's vision for OER is very much the brainchild of Dr. Melissa Highton, who Nick's already mentioned. Melissa is our Assistant Principal for Online Learning and Director of Learning, Teaching and Web Services here in Information Services Groups. And if her name sounds familiar to some of you, that may be because she used to work as a Senior Staff Development Officer here at the University of Leeds many years ago. Our student union were also instrumental in encouraging the university to support OER, and we continue to see student engagement and co-creation as being fundamental aspects of open education. This commitment to OER is more important now than ever, at a time of crisis and social change, when we're emerging from a global pandemic that has disrupted education for millions, and we're embracing new approaches and models of teaching and learning. In order to support open education and the creation and use of OER, the university has an open education resources policy that was first approved by our Education Committee in 2016 and reviewed and updated last year. And in actual fact, our original OER policy was heavily based on a policy originally developed by the University of Leeds. Our new policy has adopted the UNESCO definition of OER, and the update also brings it in line with our existing lecture recording and our new virtual classroom policies. And the policy itself has been shared under open licence and is available to download along with several of our other open licence teaching and learning policies. One thing to be aware of with our OER policy is that it's informative and permissive. It doesn't tell colleagues what they must do. Instead, it's aimed to encourage staff and students to engage with open education and to make informed decisions about using, creating and publishing OERs to enhance the quality of the student experience. Investing in OER and open licensing also helps to improve the sustainability and longevity of our educational resources, while encouraging colleagues to reuse and repurpose existing open materials, expands the pool of teaching and learning resources, and helps to diversify the curriculum. In order to support our OER policy, we have a central OER service based in Information Services Group that provides staff and students with advice and guidance on creating and using OER and engaging with open education. The service runs a programme of digital skills workshops and events focused on copyright literacy, open licensing, OER and playful engagement. We offer support directly to schools and colleges, work closely with the university's Wikimedia in residence, and we also employ student interns in a range of different roles, including open content curation interns. And the OER service also places openness at the centre of the university's strategic learning technology initiatives, including lecture recording, academic blogging, VLE foundations, MOOCs, and distance learning at scale, in order to build sustainability and minimise the risk of copyright debt. Now, when I talk about the University of Edinburgh's OER service, it always sounds very grand, but in actual fact, the entire service is less than 1.5 people. It's myself and my colleague, Charlie Farley. I actually work part-time and I also work on several other services. So we're actually a very, very small service in a very, very big institution. But we do work hard to try to promote the sustainability of OER through our digital skills programmes. And we also manage OpenEd, a one-stop shop that provides access to open education resources produced by staff and students across the university. We don't have a single central OER repository, as we know from experience that they're often unsustainable and can be really difficult to encourage engagement. Instead, our policy recommends that OER are shared in an appropriate repository or public access website in order to maximise their discovery and use by others. And the OER service provides access to many channels for this purpose on both university and commercial services. And we aggregate a showcase of Edinburgh's OERs on the OpenEd website. We also don't have a formal peer review system for open education resources. The review process that different materials will undergo depends on the nature of the resources themselves. So, for example, we trust our academic staff to maintain the quality of their own teaching and learning materials. Resources created for MOOCs in collaboration with our online course production service will be reviewed by a team of academic experts. OERs created by students in the course of their curriculum assignments will be formally assessed by tutors and peers. And if these resources are shared in public, such as our Geoscience outreach OERs, which I'll come on and tell you a bit about in a minute, they also undergo a second review process by our open content curation interns to ensure all third-party content is copyright cleared and that no rights are breached. While open content shared on Wikipedia is open to review by hundreds of wiki admins, thousands of fellow editors, and millions of Wikipedia users. As a result of this strategic commitment to OER, we have a wide range of open education practices going on across the university. But what I want to focus on today are some examples of integrating open education in the curriculum through co-creation and OER assignments. Engaging with OER can help to develop a wide range of core disciplinary competencies and transferable attributes, including digital and information literacy skills, writing as public outreach, collaborative working, information synthesis, copyright literacy, critical thinking, source evaluation, and data science. And one way that colleagues and students have been engaging with open education is by contributing to Wikipedia, the world's biggest open education resource, and the gateway through which millions of people seek to access knowledge. The information on Wikipedia reaches far beyond the encyclopedia itself by populating other media and influencing Google search returns. Information that is right or wrong or missing on Wikipedia affects the whole internet and the information that we consume. Sharing knowledge openly, globally and transparently has never been more important to building understanding, whether about the COVID pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement or other critical issues. And the need for a neutral platform that you can gain access to knowledge online for free has never been more vital in this era of hybrid teaching, remote working and homeschooling. Working together with the university's Wikimedian in residence, Ewan McAndrew, a number of colleagues from schools and colleges across the university have integrated Wikipedia and Wikidata assignments into their courses. Editing Wikipedia provides valuable opportunities for students to develop their digital research and communication skills and enables them to contribute to the creation and dissemination of open knowledge. Writing articles that will be publicly accessible and live on after the end of their assignment has proved to be highly motivating for students and provides an incentive for them to think more deeply about their research. It encourages them to ensure they are synthesising all the reliable information available and to think about how they communicate their scholarship to a general audience. Students can see that their contribution will benefit the huge audience that consults Wikipedia, plugging gaps in coverage and bringing hidden histories and significant figures to light. This makes for a really valuable and inspiring teaching and learning experience that enhances digital literacy and research and communication skills for both staff and students. Examples of Wikimedia curriculum assignments include Global Health Challenges postgraduates who collaborate to evaluate short stub Wikipedia articles related to natural and man-made disasters, such as the 2020 Assam floods. History students came together to re-examine the legacy of Scotland's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade and to look at the sources being used in evaluating the contributions of key figures like Henry Dundas, but also balancing this against presenting a more positive view of Black history by creating new pages such as this one for Jessie Ewing Glasgow. And reproductive biology honours students work in groups to publish new articles on reproductive biomedical terms. Being able to write with a lay audience in mind has shown to be incredibly useful in science communication. So for example, in 2016, Senior Honours Reproductive Biology student Anya Kavanagh wrote this article on high-grade serous carcinoma, one of the most common and deadly forms of ovarian cancer. And this article has now been viewed over 130,000 times, and it's hard to imagine any other piece of undergraduate coursework having this kind of global impact. And recently, in collaboration with Wikimedia UK, our Wikimedian Ewan co-authored this book of case studies of Wikimedia in education, which you can download for free from this URL. And also many of the resources that Ewan has created as part of his residency are freely available. And I'll share these slides afterwards so you can access all these links. Another important benefit of open education is that it facilitates the co-creation of knowledge and understanding. Co-creation can be described as student-led collaborative initiatives, often developed in partnership with teachers or other bodies out with an institution. A key feature of co-creation is that it must be based on equal partnerships between teachers and students, and relationships that foster respect, reciprocity, and shared responsibility. And one example of open education is in the curriculum is Geosciences outreach course. And this is an optional project-based course for honours and taught master's students that attracts a range of students from various degree programmes, including geology, ecology and environmental sciences, geophysics, geography, archaeology and physics. Over the course of 2 semesters, students design and undertake an outreach project that communicates some element of their field. Students have an opportunity to work with a wide range of clients, including schools, outdoor centres and community groups, to design and deliver resources for STEM engagement. These resources can include classroom teaching materials, community events, materials for museums and visitor centres, and all kinds of other resources. Students may work on a project idea suggested by their client, but they're also encouraged to develop their own project ideas. This approach delivers significant benefits, not just to students and staff, but also to the client and the university. Students have the opportunity to work in new and challenging environments, acquiring a range of transferable skills that enhance their employability. Staff and tutors benefit from communicating their work and their research to wider audiences to support knowledge exchange and wider dissemination of scientific research. The client gains a product that can be reused and redeveloped, and the university benefits by embedding community engagement in the curriculum, promoting collaboration and interdisciplinarity, and forging relationships with clients. A key element of the course is to develop resources with a legacy that can be reused by other communities and organisations. Open content curation student interns employed by the OER service repurpose these materials to create open resources that are then shared through OpenEd and TES resources, where they can be found and reused by other school teachers and learners. And these OERs, co-created by our students, have now been downloaded. This slide says 69,000 times. I think it's now up to about 75 or 80,000 times. And we're really proud that these resources were recently awarded OE Global's Award for Excellence for OER Curation. So engaging with open education and OER can also help to diversify and decolonise the curriculum and improve knowledge equity. And knowledge equity can be described as a commitment to focus on knowledge and communities that have been left out by structures of power and privilege, to break down the social, political and technical barriers preventing people from accessing and contributing to knowledge. One example is this 2016 project involving undergraduate medical students who developed a suite of resources covering lesbian, gay, bisexual and transsexual health. Although knowledge of LGBT+ health and the sensitivities needed to treat LGBT patients are valuable skills for qualifying doctors, these issues are not well covered by medical curricula. Using materials from the Commons, this project sought to address this lack through OER. So the project remixed and repurposed existing open educational resources and then contributed them back to the Commons. New open resources, including digital stories recorded from patient interviews and resources for secondary school children of all ages, were also created and released as OER. And our Wikimedia projects also have a strong strand of knowledge equity. Much of Ewan McAndrew's work, our Wikimedian in Residence, focuses on addressing Wikipedia's gender gap by increasing the quantity and quality of biographical articles about women on the encyclopedia through weekly Women in Red editathons. And we have lots of other examples I could share, including editathons and events for Ada Lovelace Day, International Women's Day, and LGBT History Month. We run a workshop on decolonising the curriculum with OER, and we're in the process of recruiting an intern to surface open resources to support anti-racist pedagogy. And we also share reading lists focused on anti-racism and empowering women in the digital age. So projects such as these provide our staff and students with opportunities to engage with the co-creation of sustainable open knowledge and to improve knowledge equity. And we often find that this inspires our staff and students to further knowledge activism. So this is Thomas Sanders, who was an undergraduate history student who worked with the OER service as one of our open content curation student interns about 4 or 5 years ago now, I think. And at the time, Thomas was inspired to go on to run a successful Wikipedia editathon for Black History Month with the Student History Society. And one of the lovely things about Thomas's knowledge activism is that it didn't end after he left the university. 3 years after he graduated, Thomas turned up at the HIV Scotland Wikipedia editathon that we ran for LGBT History Month. So to conclude, these are just some of the examples of ways we've been supporting engagement with open education and integrating OER and open knowledge into the curriculum here at the University of Edinburgh. And there are many, many more examples. Open licensing academic blogs, open resource lists, student-created open journals, open textbooks, our open media bank of Creative Commons licensed MOOC videos, and playful approaches to developing information and copyright literacy skills. So hopefully this demonstrates to you how valuable engaging with open education and OER is for developing essential digital skills, core competencies and transferable attributes, and also for disseminating our research and for co-creating open, community-based, sustainable online education. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thanks, Lorna. I must apologise if I was clicking away and I accidentally managed to pause the recording for only a split
No
second.
problem.
a split second, but the button was right below the chat. So
is that what that was? And thank you, Lorna. We didn't need to give you a 5-minute warning because you've actually finished 5 minutes early. So yeah.
Be bang on time. I don't know if it's is it worth going straight on to, I mean, there was one question came in from Vanessa that it might be just worth putting to Lorna, if that's all right with you, Antonio.
Yeah, sure, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah.
So make sure I don't pause the recording again, because pause recording is right on the chat in my interface. So Vanessa was asking, well, do you want to come on the mic, Vanessa, and ask yourself about if you should be able to unmute, I think.
Oh yeah, so well, firstly, thank you so much. And Edinburgh's always been inspiring over the last years with open education. Now, I put in the chat, I'm really glad that you're still at it.
We are.
It is a huge job, but you guys are just so creative. What I was curious about is to what extent are you dependent on libraries with a lot of your work? I think I understand libraries are part of the same department, so information services at Edinburgh, but how closely do you liaise to get some of this stuff done? Do libraries have a big role, or to what kind of extent do libraries feature here?
So the library is part of information services group.
Yes.
Information services in Edinburgh is huge, it's enormous, and there are 4 or 5 directorates, I think, within information services. So the library is one directorate, One of the other directorates is Learning, Teaching and Web Services. That's the one headed up by Melissa Highton. So the OER service, the Wikimedian in Residence, all these initiatives, they're based in Learning, Teaching and Web Services.
Yes.
So that's where the service is delivered from. But we do obviously work with colleagues in the library. So for example, I very briefly mentioned an open textbook project, which is an experimental project that we did with the new library, Edinburgh Diamond Open Press. So what I would say is we have sort of collaborative projects with our colleagues in the library. Certainly, again, Ewan, our Wikimedian, has run some really interesting collaborative projects with our Centre for Research Collections, but the OER service itself is based in a different bit of information services group.
Great, thanks. And then I was just curious, if you think of other organisations in Europe who are also really active like yourselves, who comes to mind?
Oh, there are loads, and I mean, obviously, all the open universities have got a strong strand, not just in the sort of traditional distance learning, but also in open education and OER as well. So for example, there's the OUNL in the Netherlands, the Open University in is it UNED in Spain is also very active in this area. France, actually, a lot of the school departments in France do a lot of really good work in open education. There's been a lot of open education work going on in Germany. I think there are federal projects that have funded OER initiatives in different areas of Germany. I did a talk for a consortium of Swiss universities in December, who are also just launching an OER initiative, and there's a lot of work going on in Ireland as well, a huge amount of open education work going on in Ireland. In fact, I quoted Catherine Cronin in this presentation, who's probably, a hugely inspiring OER practitioner. She's worked in Ireland for much of her career. So yeah, so there's a huge amount of open education work going on right across Europe.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Vanessa. So I hope that was okay, Antonio. We only had one question. Please do keep any questions coming. And I'm aware now as well, Vanessa, you are recorded for that question. I don't think you'll mind, but if you do, let me know. But with that, I'll hand over to you, Antonio. And yeah, if you can share your slides, thank you.
Yes, sorry, I think I'm sharing the wrong one. Hang on a second. Here it is. Can you see my sharing now?
I can see the global challenge. Yeah, the
global challenge.
A pile of stones. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being there. Thank you, Nick, for organizing this, and thank you so much to Lorna, who I have known for many years, your institution. It's an example, an amazing example of good practice in the area of open education resources, open educational practice, student engagement with the production of knowledge is fantastic. And I have to say that I feel very, very jealous. But at the same time, I feel very inspired. And it's great that we have recorded this, because your participation here and your message will help me in my work a lot, because I can do a lot of show and tell internally. And for instance, we are undertaking a project called Curriculum Revisited, in which we are going to redefine some of the principles of the work that we do with our own students. And there is an aspect of it, a very important aspect of it, related to authenticity. And in my forthcoming meeting about this topic, I'm going to ensure that we put co-creation of knowledge with the students at the top of the agenda within the principle of authenticity. This is something that I feel very passionate about. As you know, I've been producing OER with my own students for many years as part of my modules, but we need to make it more institutional. Yeah? And your experience is amazing. And this is this talk of mine today is kind of a mid-term report It has been 1 year in my role as academic lead for open educational practice, and in a way, it's helped me to reflect upon what we have achieved in this time. And one of the aspects of my job was to contribute to setting the foundations for something like what you have in Edinburgh. First, in terms of digital infrastructure, but also in terms of open educational practices. And there had been great work before last year. Before I took on the job, there were a lot of colleagues in the library in particular, in the case of open education resources, that had been working on a fantastic project that is going to come to fruition very soon. And we were the first institution, or one of the first in having an open educational resources policy long time ago, but we had open educational resources as part of our agenda for a long time. And I want to be very positive, truly optimistic about our future with OER here at Leeds. We can learn a lot from you and from others, but obviously our trajectory into OER is different, and it happens the same with other institutions. Well, I'm proud to say that open educational practice is featuring heavily in one of our flagship projects presented as part of our showcasing of our own digital strategy. You can watch the whole video later. I've had some slides there of the video. Our university has developed a partnership with a number of institutions in Africa for the co-creation of learning resources in the area of food sustainability. Nick, I think you have the link somewhere. We can share it later. And openness and co-creation are at the center of this initiative, which is presented as an example to others, within our own institution as well. And our digital education services, producing a lot of MOOCs in partnership with organizations like Future Learn, have the idea they are actually going to share with open educational resources licenses, with Creative Commons licenses rather, all the materials that they are producing. And of course, openness and open educational practice can be developed without having an institutional repository, can be developed without having a website like the one that you have, which is amazing. But many of us in Leeds believe that it would help us a lot. It would make a big difference if we have an open ed, an open Leeds like the one that you have. So we have a wonderful strategy that is becoming, as we speak here at Leeds, is becoming a set of fully fledged plans and projects to deliver these objectives. To me, being involved in open educational practice here has been important because it has helped me to connect better with our dreams, with our aspirations as an institution, and understand better the sincerity of these dreams, both as individuals, as an institutions, like to personify for once institutions. Institutions also dreams, and they are true and honest dreams and a true honest desire for a better world. And these dreams, what are these dreams? Well, very obviously the same as with Edinburgh and with a lot of great institutions. Although our students are our most immediate priority, we are a values-driven institution. We want to change society for the better. We want to tackle inequalities, and our benchmark, our objective is, to commit ourselves to the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. I decided to put it in Spanish. Here you are, and we have a mission. Contribute for a great future for humanity, not only through research but through more global education. So in the face of new pressing social challenges, we need to educate beyond our cohorts. And obviously the library is crucial for this. So in an increasingly global scenario, open educational practice becomes an even more important operating principle for us. And a lot of that practice, a lot of that open educational practice is carried out or at least supported by digital means. And just briefly, what is educational practice? Well, as Lorna was saying, it's a very broad umbrella concept that covers a number of activities, including not only the creation of OER, but the engagement with open technologies, co-creation of learning experiences, collaboration and sharing of ideas, professional experience, pedagogies, and engaging with digital scholarship. And it's more like a direction of travel, openness, that affects most of what we do, not only around education, but also in the field of so-called research dissemination, which in my view is just a form of education, research dissemination, and even within participatory research, which is heavily educational, can be heavily educational. So participating in digital spaces is crucial nowadays for public scholarship, for engagement with the public. And I'm showing here an image of a university in the United States where they have a more visual approach to this idea of the public scholarship with a number of activities. In the outer part of the circle, exhibitions, opinion pieces, conferences, articles in public scholarship journals, arts and media, reports on with community partners, apps and websites, etc. And you see that the idea of civic responsibility, reciprocity, public knowledge, creativity is at the heart of that concept of public scholarship. And over here in the United Kingdom, we don't use public scholarship that much. We use other terms, and in some cases there is, there are strong coincidences and overlappings between public scholarship and open educational practice, and public engagement, which is another term used in this area. Let me see where I am, sorry. Have too many screens and too many things to say. But yeah, here at Leeds, we have, and this is an important link, Nick. Here at Leeds, we have Engage Research, which is an internal organization or an internal initiative that is carrying out a lot of this great work of engaging through research with the public or with communities. And everyone who is here from the University of Leeds, there is a link to become part of this team. I hugely recommend that you go into it. I think our director of Engage Research, Alexa Rupertsberg, is here in the audience. Thank you for being there. And a lot of the participatory experiences that you have seen, many of the things that you have seen in other parts of the agendas of other institutions can be found in this part of our operations here at Leeds, Engage Research. And then obviously there is the National Coordinating Center for Public Engagement, which is important as well in this respect. And when I started with the job of Open Education Practice Academic Lead, I was given the task of not only support open education resources and the creation of an infrastructure, etc., but also with podcasting. There had been a lot of important work done in podcasting for the last 3 years, not only in the form of podcasts created by our own colleagues, but also as part of a group, a working group that was leading, in which we were trying to design some principles that would be leading to a strategy for the whole university, so that this is not a piecemeal approach to people doing podcasts here and there and not having a shared frame as an institution. And we have developed materials for podcasting for colleagues. I have been giving regularly courses, activities here at the university and beyond in Spain, and with specific subjects as well, on the importance of podcasting for education. This is an image of the working documents that we have created. And if you're interested in this, I have created in Twitter a hashtag, it will be shown at the end, called University Podcasting. And why did we choose podcasting? Because it was seen as a great medium for academics to use it as a sort of sandpit for openness. It's relatively easy to produce. It makes academics and students to think about the effort of communicating their knowledge to other people who perhaps are less knowledgeable than them. There are many things to discuss about this relationship between audience and producer, etc. But basically, podcasting can help people to translate knowledge and make it more accessible to others. And there is also an added value here that I wanted to mention with in the context of decolonizing. There is a book called Towards Decolonizing the University, a Kaleidoscope for Empowered Action, that has a chapter about the importance of the podcast of this decolonizing collective at the University of Kent in bringing down barriers and giving access to non-privileged voices, or voices that are usually marginalized by academic forms of production. So podcasting has got a tremendous value. And social media is also an important aspect to consider here, because blogging, Twitter, they embody new forms of digital scholarship, which is very important in open educational practice, digital scholarship. And all this has been done with the fantastic support of my colleagues and friends from ODPL at the University of Leeds. And I like to do open educational practice myself. I've been committed for many years to this, both as part of my module, and I wanted just to show you an example of an activity that I think, it can be considered a good example of a poetry group that I lead, where openness is at the heart of the recitals, an open mic, an open mic evening, it can be called. But we record the event. We include people from different parts of the world. We have different languages. And then with the recordings, we have a sharing structure whereby, participation can be done after the event, and people can see themselves reciting the poems, and it's linked to many of the things that the people who participate in there teach. It's not only me, there are other colleagues as well. And we teach languages, we teach literature. So we externally, without presenting this as an event organized by the University of Leeds, but we do things openly for the community, and co-creating those contents with the community. And sometimes that is the easiest and the best way to do things, because I haven't had to fill in any forms or write any reports about this activity, which I can present as something that I've done as a committed professional practitioner, but it's not, technically speaking, part of my job. And I wanted to, I didn't know if I had enough time for I'm looking at this 122. 122.
Yeah,
So
I think we're okay, Antonio. No problem.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a brief story, and it's a real story. It's not a metaphor for anything. Yeah, I was talking to a friend who, has a very public, visible job, but nothing to do with universities whatsoever. We were talking about how bad the world, the way in which the world is going with global warming, with poverty, with fake news, with inequalities. And we were thinking about what to do. And this is a true conversation that happened the other day. And we started to think, governments, can we rely on governments to address problems such as fake news, the polarization of public opinion around theories like denying global warming or denying experts' opinion, rejecting the views of those who have somehow the knowledge. They are in a position of authority because they are the researchers who understand the topic, the lack of trust in universities as well. And we were talking about all this, and then we were, when it came to looking for a duty, or looking for people who are in a position, or institutions who are in a position to contribute to solve these problems, we concluded that universities are in a very important position there. And I don't know what you think. Do you think universities and academics have a greater role to play through the effective use of our knowledge, in solving these problems? What obstacles do you see? So there is a Menti, and this is the code. If you want to, if you want to contribute, I'll give you a couple of minutes to see what you think. Yeah, any thoughts about this? Academics and institutions, do we have a duty to share more knowledge, to be more present within society? Okay, so let's see what people are saying. So Menti 1956-7958. So we are publicly funded. Our mission should be to share, educate, and be informed by the wider community. Yes, okay. Anybody else wants to say something there? Yes, one of the reasons why universities should contribute to Wikipedia is crucial. Otherwise, we are not true learning organizations. Anybody who wants to say something negative? Like, yes, but. And is there a difference between the duty of academics and the duty of institutions? All publicly funded resources should be freely and openly available to the public. First and foremost, this is an institutional question. Institutions need to be set up to give their members the resources. I like the italics there. I don't know how you can get the italics in Menti. To engage beyond classrooms. Very good. Anybody more with, in the spirit of openness, we should be open about education. Okay, one more. University have many advantages to enable them to do this. We are in a position of, authority, not as in power, but as in respectability, being in possession of knowledge that other people don't have. And I know this is philosophically controversial, talking about knowledge as something that is possessed and can be passed on. We had interesting discussions about this. Knock down the ivory tower. How can universities be more welcoming? Yes, we need to recognize the time it takes to do this and the impact. Okay, need to recognize the time it takes. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. And thank you all for your comments. And now I'm going to move to my last slides. And I know I'm taking a bit of time of the discussion, but we have had some discussion already. So
yeah, you have about 5 minutes, Antonio, but I think
okay,
we can be flexible, I think.
Thank you. So yeah, in the last days I've been, having mixed impressions and emotions about this idea of the information deficit theory, which is not really a theory, whereby the more information, there is a gap of information in society, and what we do as academics is just provide that information so that everybody can know better. And then there are a lot of people who are against this model of theory, and they talk about the fallacy of the information deficit. And I've been reading a lot about this lately. I was talking to Alexa about this. And, I've come up with the idea that the fallacy of the information deficit is also a fallacy, the fallacy of the information deficit. And I'll explain briefly why. I mean, I agree with people like Dan Kahan. You have his article here, that sharing knowledge with society is a far more complex operation than we believe, that there are a lot of factors involved, but the idea cannot be not to share or wait until we find the best way to communicate. There has been interesting things written about scientific communication in post-truth society, and all this is relevant. It's relevant because we are generating knowledge, we are sharing that knowledge with other people. Is it effective? In what way is it effective? What are the barriers? And I prefer to talk about boundaries of the information deficit model. Yeah? And there is a researcher in Japan who is undertaking some interesting work about theories on cultural capital based on Pierre Bourdieu's understanding of society, to dig deeper into what goes on with scientific communications in wider audiences. I have to say that there are obviously very specific problems with social media, with issues that have been politically hijacked and polarized by right-wing media groups, etc. But there are a lot of interesting things to be learned there. But also from our perspective, we don't, we demand science and research evidence for the way in which we communicate with audience, but we don't investigate sufficiently why colleagues do not share more, or how colleagues shares, how academics do also have some preferences. And in this case, this is a study about the engagement with technology in German teachers, and the idea of habitus, the concept of habitus from Bourdieu, is also used to explain why, despite of all the arguments in favor of using technology during the pandemic and blah, 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 there was an inclination, a predisposition by teachers not to engage with that technology, or engage in a very poor way. It was not a question of not having the resources. It was not a question of training. It was a question of preferences, and explained through the concept of habitus. And I'm more in line with what Martin Weller says about sharing. We need to share more. Very little steps can make a great difference. There are very important definitions of public scholarship in the United States that you look at now. I think the public scholarship definition is very interesting, and is very close to open educational practice in many ways. Sharing knowledge is an essential precondition of universities-led global change. I mean, we can share knowledge better, share knowledge worse, but if we don't share, we are not in a position to change anything. There is an important article here, the third mission of the university, a systematic literature review on potential constraints, that I recommend, and I can share it with you as well. This is a little summary. To finish, I want to say what they are, in my view, what are the things that we need to do now, here at Leeds and beyond. In the short term, we need a number of non-precluding incremental policies. Non-precluding meaning that the decisions that precluding, you should read precluding, that the decisions that we take now don't preclude certain developments that are at the moment uncertain. So little is beautiful. Embrace the concept of educasting. In marketing, it's called narrowcasting. I don't like narrowcasting, I prefer educasting. Engage with a specific audience, talk to people who may be interested in your content so that you know what they want, and little is beautiful. In many cases, producing resources and publishing them digitally is just a matter of recycling what you have, because we all produce things for our teaching. And obviously an institutional solution has to consider that each subject community, each department, each unit is different. One advice, informal groups of scholars sharing. That is what I was mentioning before with my own practice. It's easier to have a blog run by 3 or 4 or 5 different colleagues in different universities on a topic that you know, on a subject, and share that account for the blog, and keep publishing, keep moving through your own, communicate through your own contacts, or having a shared Twitter account, than being there by yourself as a cyber warrior. These recommendations of having groups of people engaging with one account, with a blog, with Twitter, etc., they're very much in line with what Mark Carrigan, the world expert in social media for academics, recommend. And obviously, universities need to improve the way they recognize this and provide the digital infrastructure. In the medium term, I would say that, very ambitious, I know, but we need to, and this is my very personal view, we need to bring all knowledge dissemination activities within the realm of education. This differentiation between, oh, no, this is research, oh, this is education, I think it doesn't help institutions to make open practice possible and deliver greater public engagement. A rhizomatic or rhizomatic approach to research and education, understanding the synergies and not separating but considering as one thing. Not research and education as one thing, but research, publication and education, they are one same thing. Institutional open partnerships. If you think about it, how many universities do we have in the United Kingdom or in the world? Can we address individually as academics or units, or even as institutions, some of the problems that we have mentioned? No, we need to have open partnerships that institutions can join through, because we need to pool resources. One thing is educasting, small is beautiful. Another thing is having big institutional projects to make, a tangible difference in the world. So we need to pool resources. When it comes to broadcasting, you need professionalized audience conversation and development. So you need specialists in media, helping you to deliver your knowledge and engage with audiences. And even, why not, to have agreements between groups of universities and media groups so that we can share our contents and engage with audience in a way in which, is far more effective, far more attractive, because we need to learn from those professionals, And that's my my podcasting hashtag, University Podcasting, on my Twitter. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much, Antonio. I think, were you going to do some questions, Claire?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I think you can see that the sun's come out in West Yorkshire, so it's shining on my screen. A huge thank you to Lorna and Antonio for joining us today and their informative presentations. I'm very honoured that I